The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. Live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today for Monday, September 23rd, 2019. I'm Kevin Laramee, joined by Duane Rollins. As always, Duane, how was your weekend of soccer?
It was good. Got a little swimming in too. I was dared to try and swim 100 meters yesterday, and I thought, I do that all the time. And then, wow, so now I'm sore and was wheezing and thought I was going to drown for a minute. So, it's all good. But I did actually make it.
You're like, oh man, I'm starting to drown, and the lifeguard's going to come over. It's going to create drama. I'm going to be like, no, leave me alone. Don't try to save me. Oh, it's always a complicated time at the pool.
Yeah, I'm no Michael Phelps. That's what I learned yesterday. I'm the anti Michael Phelps in many ways. And for those who don't know, we have restarted our Five Rings Olympic podcast, which you can listen to weekly live, and we'll let you know when. Just follow our socials. See that segue, Kevin?
Yeah, it wasn't not even planned. It's not like we were like, okay, let's plan by doing a little banter on like pool sports, and then we'll plug Five Rings. No, this is off the top of our head. This is how we roll. Welcome to the Sports Podcasting Network. Now let's talk about soccer, Duane. Tonight, the FIFA Football Awards, the best, are going to be live, of course, on social media, and it's not going to be on our television, but you can find ways to watch it this afternoon. Are you excited about this award ceremony, a gala, once again?
I was so excited when I found out about it less than 20 minutes ago. Yeah, for sure. As you say, that you can find a way to watch this. It's kind of like the Euro song contest. You can find a way. It's not on our television here, but you can find a way if you want. But I'm not sure why you want.
I don't.
But at least
Oh, that's a heck of a contest, Eurovision. Yeah, like trying to explain the concept to someone. Be like, okay, so every European country is represented by a singer, with the singer oftentimes is not from the country, and they're just having a competition, and it's taken very seriously.
It's like if you, we'll get on soccer soon, I promise. This is how much we're paying attention to the awards. Eurosong is like if you have you go to karaoke night and you see all those people that take it way, way, way too seriously, and then you add a dash of camp to it. That's Eurovision. But anyway, back to soccer.
Yeah, so we'll obviously keep an eye on the FIFA Best Awards. See who the best player in the world is, of course. Is it Ronaldo? Is it Messi? Is it Frankie de Jong? Matthias de Ligt? Is it Eden Hazard? Harry Kane? What a goal by Harry Kane this weekend, by the way. Gets stripped in the penalty box, and he just finds a way to put a foot on the ball and scores. But we'll talk about Europe tomorrow. Now, let's look at a bit of the results this weekend. Of course, we'll see tonight who wins the FIFA Best Awards, and again tomorrow we'll quickly talk about it. But it's an award. I call it, that there's a lot of awards in the world of football, especially European football, and it seems like everyone's always congratulating themselves, which is great. The players are playing very well, but how about playing some soccer?
Yeah, fair enough. I'll give a quick prediction. I think they're probably going to go away from the big two because the last few awards have. Because I think not necessarily because they're not the best players still, because they are. It's because they're bored and they want something different. So De Jong's my guess. But
what it is? A few years ago, the FIFA EA Sports FIFA game, right? It was Messi on the cover for about 8 years straight. And they're like, okay, there's a little Messi fatigue. Let's put a Borussia Dortmund guy. Let's put him. And the guy had the worst season, and we haven't seen him since in the Bundesliga. But no, that's what it reminds me of. There's a Messi and Ronaldo fatigue, and I believe that also they might not win tonight. But that is not the subject of today's show. Today, Duane and I will dive deep in the playoff race in Major League Soccer. We'll look at the results this weekend, and we'll look at the standings both in the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. This is like the worst playoff race ever. No one wants to win in these playoffs. No one wants to win to get in. Everyone's trying to limp in, and limping is being very, very generous here, because I think the combined amount of wins about teams battling for a playoff spot is like 2. Which is the West and the East. It's insane. Wow. Everyone's losing. It's crazy.
Yeah, as there's a tweet earlier today that sort of expounded upon that. As our friend Martin Bailey pointed out, it is a bit cherry picked in the sense that the sixth place team in the West is included, but not in the East, and part of that is the reason that the sixth place team in the East is already clinched, which right now is Toronto. So they're just talking about the teams that haven't clinched yet. They have a chance to clinch, and it is remarkable in terms of how little sort of grabbing of the whatevers they've managed to do. But that's partly because they've lowered the bar so far that this probably isn't abnormal. Like, did anyone pay attention to the race to seventh before this year? No. And
That's true.
it would have been close last year because Toronto was involved in it. They didn't quite get there.
And
so
the
there
impact,
you go.
well, and the impact, right? And the impact has less points this year than last year. Well, we'll get to the impact, and I think it's done for the impact for the playoffs. And when you look at the Eastern Conference, which you can see on your screens right now, there's only one spot left for grabs. New England Revolution in seventh spot, 41 points. Chicago Fire, 38 points in eighth position, and Montreal ninth with 37 points. Yeah, you're looking at a 4-point gap between New England and the Chicago Fire with 2 games to go. So New England's got 3 left. They got a game in hand. It's 4 points. New England, I'm not a mathematician, and hashtag math and I don't really get along. But if we did, I would say there's a 95% chance the New England Revolution are going to get the 7th spot in the Eastern Conference.
Well, if any of those teams, if any of the teams above the red line that haven't clinched it get one more win, they're pretty much in. That's what I would say. You're looking at teams like Chicago and Montreal, which I think are the only two that really have any chance at all. They have to be perfect the rest of the way, and there's no indication that they will be. So that means, when we're talking about Wednesday night, Montreal might just put it all in that and just realize that's their MLS Cup final this year in many ways, because they can control that, and that's probably a reasonable conversation to have in that dressing room. And I'm sure it's one that is being had, and it's one that we'll have in great detail on Wednesday probably when we talk about the Voyageurs Cup final. But yeah, Montreal had to get the win on the weekend.
They did, but they didn't want to because Piatti, Boyan, and Urruti did not play, choosing the Canadian Championship as a true objective. A player like Amar Sejdic, who hadn't played literally all year, like not 1 minute when the Montreal Impact as a sub. No, he starts against the LA Galaxy on Saturday. Not a questionable lineup, a lineup out of circumstances because the Impact had a couple injuries. They're resting for the Canadian Championship, and obviously it's the big target, the Canadian Championship. And with the lineup late Saturday night against the LA Galaxy, I think we can decipher that Montreal chose and is choosing the Canadian Championship this year.
Yeah, who knows? But maybe Wayne Cabrera has had a lifelong dream to become the first person to ever manage back-to-back titles in the Voyageurs Cup and the U.S. Open Cup. First ever to win both periods.
Well, he hasn't won it yet.
Yeah.
And we all saw how surprising it was to see the Dynamo win their first ever Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup last year, literally a year ago yesterday. So maybe Wilmer Cabrera will be pulling a back-to-back country, like a national cup competition, and maybe a back-to-back pink slip year too. That's going to be interesting.
Yes, fair enough. I'll sometime in the next couple of days, when I can find some time, I will run the list of players that have won both the U.S. Open Cup and the Voyageurs Cup. It's not a very long list, but Cabrera does, in fact, have the opportunity to become the first manager to do it. So there you go. That is a little trivia question for you if you're interested in that game. But back to this, yes. Look, it is, to me, it's a bit of a strange choice because I did look at the way the results played out. Had Montreal gotten 3 points, they're right there, and they're absolutely in the mix. So the fact that they were outright in any real way heading into the game was a bit silly. So basically what has happened there is they've decided they can't possibly win both, so they'd rather win Wednesday. And that's something you see, but it is a choice that does surprise me a little bit. Toronto was... So go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say we were surprised too, and I think it has to do with the fact, example, just take Nacho Piatti of an example. He played 90 minutes in the Canadian Championship, but he played 90 minutes the game right before, which maybe that was a mistake. And that's when you're like, okay, he played the 90 minutes that weekend, just coming off of injury, and then he's playing the Canadian Championship final 90 minutes as well. Do you make him travel to LA and play 90 minutes again for him to be to be fresh for the second leg in Toronto. So I think it's the mismanagement of Nacho Piatti's minutes by Wilmer Cabrera over the last 2 weeks have led to the decision of not playing him on Saturday, which have led to the decision of Montreal choosing the Canadian Championship. I think it's all a domino effect that all stems from Wilmer Cabrera's load management or lack thereof with Nacho Piatti once he came back from injury.
Yeah, I guess, we might as well continue on this conversation now. And it's a conversation we've been having for a week now. How much, in your mind, will Impact fans be appeased by winning a Voyageurs Cup? Let's just assume they do. They still have to, obviously.
They still have to. They would be really happy because you get something out of the season. I don't know how to put this in other words, but having a season in Major League Soccer or a league similar in the world, you have a bad season, good. You're not relegated, so that's always a positive. But it's not like because if Montreal loses all their games and they might have like the third or fourth super draft pick in their next round last year, well, what is that worth? It's not like it's going to change your franchise. It's not like you're going to get like, let's use a soccer terminology. It's not like the next Cristiano Ronaldo is in the super draft, and if you can draft him in number one, your entire franchise is going to be different for the next 20 years. No, it's not hockey. It's not football. It's not baseball. Well, even baseball, you've ever seen this, but it's not basketball. So you don't get something out of the season if you finish out of the playoff and you don't win the Canadian Championship. You literally get nothing. You get allocation, blah, 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 but you don't get anything. And for me, the Canadian Championship, it's a trophy, but it's also a positive finish to the season, giving you an opportunity to shine in the CONCACAF Champions League in the spring, in February. And it gives you, for me at least, it gives you the pressure of result early in the season, which doesn't exist in Major League Soccer. But giving you that in the CONCACAF Champions League in late February, early March, it gives you like a little more focus when you're training. Like, all right, I got something to get ready for really early. I got to get ready. And I think it could be a good way to rebuild the core of the team like the Montreal Impact, which will need some rebuilding this offseason. I think it would be a perfect storm mixed with the rumors of Joey Saputo investing more money in the Montreal Impact next offseason. I think mixed with the CONCACAF Champions League presence if they win on Wednesday, I think it would be a perfect storm to make a bloody big deal, but this time un gros deal.
Yeah. I do look forward to, if the Impact do win on Wednesday, our weekly, like, how much snowfall has been on top of the Big O reports, because that's going to be fun for the February game. But
they might invest in heating technology this offseason for the Saputo Stadium. The Impact really don't want to play at the Olympic Stadium anymore. No one does because we don't have to go into detail. Just Google Olympic Stadium, Montreal, and problems, and have fun reading for the next 20 days. But that's why Saputo Stadium might be winterized.
Fair enough. That will be a very big topic of conversation if the Impact are in fact playing a home game in February, which right now don't really have a suitable facility to do so. Maybe they can play it at BMO. Anyway, that would be interesting.
It's B-no. But, all right. We've talked about the Impact and the playoff race. We'll get there. Let's just go through a little bit of the results, Duane. And at the same time, Atlanta San Jose, 3-1 victory for the Atlanta United. But this victory could be costly in the next few weeks because Josef Martinez is injured. Probably an injury. And we're talking about weeks. Maybe he'll be back in time for the playoff, but it's going to be very, very close.
Yeah, Taylor Twellman reported originally when it first happened that it didn't look very good at all, and suggested that perhaps this might be an injury that might knock him out of the playoffs, maybe even altogether. In the nature of these playoffs, that doesn't take much, right? He's back from that a little bit, says that they are telling him that things look a little bit better on second viewing, but I'm wondering, much like Josie Altidor's injury in 2017 in the playoffs, which they were basically treating through prayer and drugs, injections to freeze it, and then it ultimately derailed them for an entire year, might be similar, right? Like, they're in the business end of the season. If this was July, they're shutting them down for a month, but now they're going to be keeping them afloat basically on prayer, as I said, and that may have an impact either in this playoff here if he can't compete at his full level, or if not, then certainly the toll that will have on his body may in fact impact him moving forward. Now, this is speculation, clearly, but it's based on Taylor Twellman, who is a very respected reporter, as anyone who's listened to this show knows. And I say that. Every time I still say that, it blows my mind because I remember as a player, and he's the player you least would have guessed would have turned into like Nick Kyprios, the equivalent in MLS anyway.
True, and it's still my dream to have Taylor Twellman on the show. Taylor, if you're listening, answer me. Come on the show. I know he's not, but a boy can dream. A boy can dream, and I'm dreaming of the day I can talk to Taylor Twellman, one of the most credible voices, of course, for ESPN when it comes to soccer. And it's always a pleasure to watch him, and I even saw him do some SportsCenter earlier this year, which was fun too. But now let's continue. If Jose Martinez is not playing for Atlanta in the playoffs, this could change the whole playoff picture in the Eastern Conference and give NYCFC maybe an advantage, which could be an amazing Eastern Conference final. And the thing is, where is that final going to take place if NYCFC finishes above Atlanta the way it's looking now, Duane, and the Yankees make a deep playoff run? We might see NYCFC needing to find a new field, and who knows, they might go to Citi Field, play some soccer in Citi Field, and where the Mets play. I doubt it.
It's not Shea Stadium, but yes. Well, this is called Shea. It will always be Shea Stadium.
It'll always be Shea Stadium. But, it was a rumor that I've seen last week. We have seen soccer games before, like you can see on your screens, at Citi Field. It's closer than Connecticut, and it would give an opportunity to your fans to actually come to the game, which might not be the case if you're having it in Connecticut like they did a few years ago. So that's a possibility. But NYCFC, Atlanta, those are the two teams in the Eastern Conference right now that not only are having great season, but momentum at the right time.
Yeah, look, I ran last week. I tweeted it out. You can find it if you want, the points since August 1st, which is a useful measure. I did it just pure points, not points per game. New York played a lot more games than most teams, so they have considerably more points than most teams. But they are, as I just said, considerably further ahead than everyone else in terms of points gained since August 1st. If you look at the history of MLS Cup champions over the past few years, they typically are in the top five of a metric like that. I mean, Seattle in 2016, certainly they went from not even being in the playoffs at the start of August to obviously standing in the confetti at the end of the season. Now, it's a little different because the season went a little deeper, not in terms of games played, but in terms of length. So August 1st was a bit further back in the schedule. But nonetheless, it is something to keep an eye on. You mentioned it could dramatically change the Eastern playoffs. I would say I agree to a point. I think NYCFC has done more than enough over the past 6 weeks to prove that they are now the favorite in the East. I don't think there's much doubt of that. And Atlanta has been pretty good, and they would have been my second favorite. If Martinez is not there, then who knows what the Eastern final might look like. I could make an argument for any team from Toronto up, basically. I could make an argument that they could. Toronto's among the top 5 teams since August 1st. You can make that argument. The DC has seemed to have turned it around and were very good last year in the playoffs. And Wayne Rooney may want to go out with a bang. Can make that argument. I mean, I'm going to argue the Red Bulls have enough history that I think they have bad history and good history that they sort of get to a certain point, not further, but they kind of get to that point. So you can make that argument there. Obviously, Atlanta we've talked about already. So it is going to be a bit wide open in the East, and who knows? Maybe it'll be New England now that I've said all this.
Exactly, Bruce Arena. We'll see. Quickly, let's look at the results here, and we'll move to the Western Conference. We'll look at both standings as well on this Monday morning. Vancouver Columbus 1-1, late equalizer for the Vancouver Whitecaps. Eddie Montero with the late equalizer. A game that is not worthless, not meaningless, but when you look at the playoff race on both sides of the divide, this is a meaningless game and result. New England 0-0 with Real Salt Lake. Late in this game, both teams had chances. New England hit the post. Real Salt Lake had a great chance in the extra time of the game, but it finished 0-0. New England could have sealed the fate of a lot of his position basically with the win, but they didn't. FC Cincinnati Chicago 0-0. Moving on, SKC 2 Colorado 3. This game, Duane, was fascinating. Kansas City taking the 2-0 lead, but getting the red card. Colorado coming back, and with a Kai Kamara bicycle kick to win the game late. And Colorado with the 3-2 victory. Colorado, one of the best teams in Major League Soccer since Robin Fraser took over.
Well, yeah, I talked about that since August 1st rankings that I put out there. They were second. So that tells you a little bit something about that. I mean, look, does this mean that they're going to be able to parlay that into something for 2020? I don't know if it's that hard and fast. I'll have to take a much harder look at it, and then changes in the offseason will change that. But it certainly got to be something that after a couple really bleak years for the Rapids fans, I remember having Abby on earlier in this year when they were having their terrible start, and we wanted to reach to the phone and give them all a hug over there at that point. And it's certainly much, much better since then. That was around the firing of the reserves.
And things change quickly in Major League Soccer. That's why I was saying earlier, you never know. You got 3-4 new players, core players. You get a coach with a direction and identity. You got a few money invested in your team, and you have yourself a contender in just one off season. Things move fast in Major League Soccer. Houston, Orlando. Speaking of things that don't move fast, Houston, Orlando, 2-1 for Houston at home, for whatever that's worth. LAFC, Toronto FC, 1-1. Late penalty for LAFC, and Carlos Vela scored. Carlos Vela, 29 goal this year so far. Golden Boot leader, followed by Zlatan at 27, but LAFC with the late point salvage in the game at home versus Toronto FC.
Yeah, look, we kind of touched on it already. It was an interesting game. LAFC had a lot of the ball, a lot of chances. Toronto defended pretty well, got the early goal, and held on to the very, 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 very end. It was in the 95th minute when the penalty ultimately crossed the line. I don't know. I think it really is a half full, half empty sort of picture from a Toronto perspective, in the sense that they were able to defend very well against what we all understand to be the best team in Major League Soccer. They did have, a few chances that maybe on a better day go in, but nonetheless, it still was one goal allowed. But they weren't able to create much at all, which is kind of what people have been saying about TFC, that they can either defend or attack, but they can't defend and attack. And maybe in the playoffs, if you've got a Josie Altstore hot, you can defend and hope, which I think is probably, based on what I saw yesterday, the strategy that they're going to have when they're playing a better team, is they're going to sit back and they're going to hope that maybe Josie can steal one. And it's not the worst strategy I've ever heard of, but I don't know if it has 3 wins in it, if you follow, based on what I saw against LA. But, it's a far cry from when the conversations we were having about TFC back in June. When it looked like this was going to be another 2018. This is a completely mediocre season, as I've said all along, and they're going to finish in the middle of the East, and they're going to do middling things in the playoffs. And I think that's exactly what I saw on the weekend against LA. Whether the fact that LA hasn't yet clinched the shield, should LAFC fans be worried about that? The other side of this conversation, different conversation, and maybe one that we'll explore a little bit further tomorrow or Thursday this week.
Well, what I was saying too on Saturday, Duane, is I wish one day I could pull off wearing a gray sweater, running shoes, and black jeans and look as good as Bob Bradley is on the sideline. One day I'll be able to pull it off.
His whole family looks like Bond villains.
Look amazing Bond villains. Love that. I wish, first of all, I have to hit the gym if I want to look like that one day.
If Bob Bradley's age,
have to hit the gym 10 years ago.
Michael's younger than you, so he has an excuse. But yes.
Have to hit the gym 10 years ago. Well, now let's continue quickly. Montreal, LA Galaxy, 2-1 for the LA Galaxy. A weird game as well. Disallowed goals. Montreal's first goal was disallowed for offside. There was handballs on both sides. There should have been an offside on Zlatan's goal. Pavon was offside, and Zlatan was barely offside too. There's a lot of missed call in this game. VAR. Fire it into the sun, as Duane would say, and I have to say, starting to be in favor of that gesture. But LA Galaxy 2, Montreal Impact 1. We've talked about it already. Portland, Minnesota 0-0. The absence of Brett Kalman for 10 games is starting to be noticed and noticeable for Minnesota in the midfield. FC Dallas 1, NYCFC 1. The Red Bulls 2, Philly 0. DC United 2. The Seattle Sounders 0. Red Bulls with a crucial win, giving Philly a little bit of a loss of momentum heading into the last 2 weeks of the season. But yeah, this was your weekend in Major League Soccer.
Yeah, we'll talk about VAR a little bit more tomorrow, I'm pretty sure, because we're talking about Europe, and I don't know if you can talk about the English week without talking about VAR, unfortunately. And there's a shifting, I'm noticing a shifting tone in belief around that concept in my European listens. So we'll talk about that more tomorrow. So we'll leave it well enough alone today. I thought the most interesting result of the weekend was the Red Bulls getting that result. I was not expecting that, to be honest. And it proves again to me, it says something about both teams. It says something about the resilience of NYRB, or RBNY, as some people are correcting me on the internet about that, but whatever.
Don't you love pedantic people? Oh, you gotta love them. You gotta love them.
I'm not going to take my marching orders from Red Bull HQ, so it's NYRB forever to me. But anyway, New York, the team that plays in New Jersey calls themselves New York, and it represents a energy drink. That team, they have some resilience, and you never should count them completely out. And I think that result showed that. But it also, I think, says something about Philadelphia, is that even though they're having a very good, consistent season, and in the East, that's a really important thing. They're the only team that I think you can say that from start to finish this year have been consistent, and that's a valuable thing. I don't know if they have the other gear, and that's the question I think everyone has when it comes to a playoff. Is anyone going to pick the Philly Union to win MLS Cup when the playoff predictions come rolling in a couple of weeks? I'm not sure.
Here's a scoop.
Do that, but yeah.
I just looked into the future. And no one will take Philadelphia to win Major League Soccer.
Even though they're going to be amongst the top four point holders in the league, yeah.
But LAFC, NYCFC, and Atlanta will get all the headlines. Philly still has to prove themselves in the playoffs, I guess, to truly get our vote of confidence. I don't know.
Yeah, hell, I might be more willing to pick one of those upstart teams in the West, to be honest with you. So we'll have to look at this carefully in a couple of weeks, but Philly just doesn't seem to have that other gear. That to me was the most interesting result of the weekend by far, was that result. And I thought New England, the 0-0, that was interesting too, in a weird sort of way to me. I expected RSL, based on their form and based on just my belief that they're a more talented team, to roll them. And New England, to their credit, pushed back and managed to get the point, but still at home, when you're chasing a playoff spot, you want more than 1 point. So we're getting into that point of the season where you can create a narrative out of any of these results, unless they're two teams outside the playoffs, right? That's why we're not talking about Vancouver Columbus, even though this is a show based in Canada. Sorry, Whitecaps fans. Actually, you're welcome, Whitecaps fans. We're probably not going to talk about them very much until the end of the season.
until February 29, 2020. Probably not going to talk a lot about, of course, the Vancouver Whitecaps. Now, to finish the show today, let's look at the standings both in Eastern Conference, Western Conference. There's some new features in the standing. There's a lot of X's next to teams, so bear with us. We're going to clarify it right now for you. NYCFC clinched for the playoffs. Top of the East, 58 points. Second in the Eastern Conference, Atlanta United, Duane with 54 points. Philly Union clinched, 52 points. Third, DC United clinched. Fourth, 48 points. The New York Red Bull, fifth, clinched with 47 points. Toronto FC, sixth, and playoff berth clinched, where that is not sure yet, but it's clinched for the playoffs, 46 points. And the Revolution, seventh with 41 points. The only two teams with a marginal shot at taking over New England in seventh position in the Eastern Conference would be Chicago Fire with 38 points and the Montreal Impact with 37. This is the meaningful, at least, part of the Eastern Conference standings.
Yeah, there are the New York's winning it. Atlanta and Philadelphia will decide who's second. Atlanta is going to finish. Well, those two teams are going to be 2-3. The other three teams from 6 to 3 are going to fight it, or 6 to 4 are going to fight it out for who gets that home berth. And then New England's going to probably just finish seventh. That's how I see that playing out from here.
Yeah, unless it continues in the same trend and they all continue to lose, and then it would just stay the same, and New England would get it too. Now, on the west side, things are a lot more open. Not a lot of new X's next to teams. Actually, there's only one Y. It's because they clinched the entire division. They have a 15 points lead before the ball in front of the second, Seattle. So LAFC first, 65 points, 2.1 points per game average this season after 31 games played. That's pretty damn fancy and pretty damn good.
Yeah. And the goal def, forget the points. The points is impressive.
Oh, my God.
Look at that goal differential.
Is that 44 plus 40?
That's Man City type, Liverpool stuff, not MLS stuff.
I look at the Sounders 1.
Yeah.
Jesus. 44. Seattle second, 50 points in the Western Conference. Third, Minnesota. Minnesota, Duane. We're going to have to call Jeff or Wes, our friends in Minnesota, because what a great season. You're talking about consistency in the Eastern Conference. In the West, Minnesota hasn't been too hot all season, but hasn't been cold either. Stayed up in third. The Galaxy now with the win against Montreal. Sorry, you were going to say?
I didn't say anything.
Okay, so the Galaxy now fourth, 48 points. Big win was for the Galaxy, Duane. It could be the difference between not making the playoffs and making the playoffs because it's so close in the Western Conference. Real Salt Lake, fifth, 47 points. FC Dallas, sixth with 45 points. And the San Jose Earthquakes, seven with 44 points. Portland Timbers are just outside the playoffs on wins. Not even, it's tied the wins too. So it comes to goals scored. It comes to the third tiebreaker for San Jose and Portland right now because they both have a differential of 1, which is not that great when you think about it for Matias Almeida and San Jose, which we expected them to be a better defensive team than they actually were this year. But look, they both have 1 in differential, so it goes to wins. They both have wins, which is 13, which is actually the first is wins, then it's differential. So it goes for goals for San Jose has 50 and Portland has 45. So goal differential might be the difference between position number 7 and position number 8 in the West.
Yeah, I think the league has figured San Jose out for the most part now. I'm not saying they're completely going to roll over them again like they did last year, but that roll, that like unbeatable sort of sense that they had in the middle of the season is gone now. If you look at their form since August 1st, like I said, they're not doing that well, and they're the team that I think if one's good, you would expect Portland. Portland has more talent. You would expect them to go over. Well, you would have expected Portland to be a lot higher than they were based on the homestand that they've had. Then again, I am one of these people that have never really rated Portland. They've gone to an MLS Cup final. They won an MLS Cup, but they've been awfully mediocre in between that. They're a weird club. This is a weird season for them again and again. But the West is a bloody logjam. And the one last final thought I have on it is, as much as it hates me to admit it, no one's going to be able to take their eyes off the Galaxy if they make the playoffs, are they? It ends Zlatan. They are going to be the show, and everyone in MLS HQ is cheering those Galaxy goals as they go in. They want badly to see Zlatan. They would love to see Zlatan and an LAFC or like an El Tráfico Western final or playoff game.
Zlatan versus Vela after a season of banter between the two. Well,
I've got Zlatan in that battle.
Oh, it depends. If it's a real fight, yeah, I'm taking Zlatan for sure. If it's a soccer game, it depends of who surrounds you. And in that case, I'm taking Vela. If I'm a Zlatan and he's calculated more than we think he is, we have to give him a bit more credit than at least I do. You think, he's just full of himself with all the comments he's saying and stuff. Like, yeah, but he's also driving a narrative that always keeps him in the limelight. And the Vela versus Ibrahimovic narrative comes of him saying, I'm better than him. So, maybe he's more calculated, but I still don't like how he treats other players. But, maybe he's smarter than I think he was.
He's a meaner version of David Beckham. David Beckham was brilliant at keeping himself the front and center, even though, as many people have pointed out before, David Beckham was never the best player in the world by far. He was maybe the 100th or 50th, depending on whether you're a United fan or not. But
let's settle for 75th or something.
Yeah, he was in that range, which is excellent for sure. But never the best, never even as good as Zlatan. But yet he was the most popular, he was the most famous, and that was because he managed his brand. But he was always very gentle about it, whereas Zlatan manages his brand in a much more abrasive, kind of in-your-face way. Both work, but they're kind of two sides of the same coin.
That's true. And it makes for an interesting viewing. And I guess LA versus LAFC would be a dream Western Conference final. We'll see if it happens because there's always upsets. And in a one-off playoff game, you never know what can happen. Sometimes just a bad decision. And we have seen Zlatan get red carded in Major League Soccer more often than once, more often than twice. And we have seen him getting yellow cards at a bad timing. So who knows? He might be putting his team in jeopardy in the playoffs too. This is all in the realms of possibilities.
And which is why no one will be able to take their eyes off him. And that is I guess it's good. It's good. It's like wrestling back in the day, man. You love the heel. Everyone loved the heel, really, even though they wouldn't admit it.
Oh, yeah, Ravishing Recruit to this day. One of the best ever. Or, of course, the one and only, the man, the legend. To be the man, you gotta beat the man. Ric Flair. On that note, I think it's a rule of podcasting. Once you make a Ric Flair reference, you have to stop your show, finish your show, and acknowledge that he's better than you, and he took your girl, he took your money, and now he's flying home in a jet. We hope you enjoyed today's show. We'll be back tomorrow with more of the world of football with a soccer perspective. We'll talk about Europe. We'll talk about results. We'll talk about the gem Chelsea-Liverpool game. And we'll talk about more of soccer across the pond tomorrow. Tuesdays are for Europe. And we'll also have some news and some other topical subject of soccer to talk to you tomorrow. Until then, you can follow Duane on social media at 24th Minute, myself at Kev Laramee, and this show at Soccer Today SPN, live Monday to Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern, on our Twitter feed. Podcast available everywhere you get your podcasts. Also, subscribe to our YouTube page, youtube.com/sportspodcast network, and also our Facebook page, facebook.com/sportspodcast network. And that way you'll never miss a show. And until tomorrow, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.